Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Miller. And this is the Gaming Dialogue podcast. A warm welcome to all of our friends, fans, community members, participants, and everyone watching us on different platforms worldwide. Thank you for joining us and thank you for being our dedicated community members. Thank you for supporting the channel, my podcast, my news, my video streams, everything I do here with my community. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of that. This channel's been around for already 6 or so years, and we've had loads and loads of streams of various games. The main game here on the channel is Destiny. Has been here from the beginning, and it created the backbone of everything that we did together with our dedicated veterans. So today in this podcast, which is basically the second part of the one we produced a couple of days ago, we are considering what really happened when Destiny was made. So the title of the podcast is Destiny, Bungie Masterpiece, and how it was made. For all of you who were watching and listening the podcast the other day, thank you so much for that. And thank you in particular to our friends who were giving us some questions upon the completion of the contents and the podcast. And you were asking questions related to the creation of this wonderful Bungie masterpiece. And I did talk about these in my earlier broadcast today during our gaming news session, and I'll just really elaborate on these again. Question number 1 was about Destiny and whether I believed that all the illustrators that were involved with the game from the beginning were still there. And the answer to that was, well, perhaps not, because Destiny and Bungie had been rotating lots of different people, but it did provide a wonderful creative endeavor for everyone who was wanting to participate. And what's very important is that they had retained the signature style of the game right from the beginning, which is present here 10 years later in the game today. So a wonderful, wonderful experience to be there from the beginning, and indeed to be participating in its development. So thank you for asking that question. The second question was about what I believed was the very best content of the Destiny saga, Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 included. And generally, I would say that that's quite an easy question for myself. The best part of Destiny 1 was the Taken King expansion and everything related to it, as it changed the course of the game and provided us with a very, very good content that we're still enjoying today. You know, restructured everything we've had from day one and brought it into a non-linear narrative with all activities being accessible at any given time, inclusive of replayability. So that was for me tip-top in Destiny 1. The best part of Destiny 2 for me was the expansion, the Witch Queen, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I found it to be very immersive, beautifully designed, lots of activities, very good storytelling, and everything as it should be. So really excelling and providing us with the very best content that Destiny could have ever imagined. The question number 3 was about my participation in Destiny community, and the question whether I had been playing this game from the very beginning. Well, I can certainly tell you I had not. I joined the community in 2017-2018, and then when I began with my streams here on Twitch, I decided that Destiny was going to be the main game, and the game that will attract very many members of the existing community and people who were quite supportive and friendly, and those who really want to help out newbies and rookies and everyone else who was perhaps less confident in doing video gaming, which was not myself. I have been a video gamer for very many years, since the early 90s, and like the idea of running a forum which is helpful, supportive, focusing on disability health, mental health in particular, and having people on board who are interested in helping others, providing tutorials and training sessions and everything else that comes together with that sort of very attentive, very caring approach towards those who are perhaps needing our attention and care, people who need it the most. And then once I joined the community, very quickly the channel and its membership began to flourish. I had many veterans joining me, as I was streaming every single day the game that actually they dedicated themselves to. They loved it, and they felt other streamers were departing for the sequel or some other video games, and very many of the original Destiny hardcore gamers and veterans became members of our community here. So that was a wonderful, wonderful experience, probably one of the best I ever had in video gaming altogether. Plus, what I discovered was that wonderful interconnectivity where we could make bonds and friendships with everyone around the world and create those new links which were to be treasured and cherished for the rest of our lives. That really flourished during the pandemic as we streamed Destiny and Warzone, and the community became very, very, very closely knitted, and we had very good connection and bonds every single day, and literally dispelling the myth of isolation and loneliness during that period, which indeed was not the case for very many. So I still get messages from people who are members of our community who were participating during those darkest days in 2020 and 21, and they're still very grateful for the companionship, for the direction, for excitement, for the overall gameplay that we'd had here, and most importantly, the support and attention given to their issues as they were experiencing a lot of difficulties. We had some people in the first wave who were suffering from COVID at the time when the pandemic broke out, and that was particularly soothing and rewarding because I was able to provide assistance and therapeutic guidance for those who were perhaps not familiar what they had to do with initial symptoms, and this will stay with me for the rest of my life. So coming back to the questions, let me think whether there was something else. I think these were the questions, and thank you to everyone who was contributing and forwarding them by email. I always appreciate the comments and views, always grateful for everyone who's taking time to listen to my ramblings and musings, and hopefully you'll find some words of wisdom in all that's been said. So coming back to what we're doing here today, we already had a gaming news session prior to this broadcast, and I talked a lot about various things which are connected with my own gaming activity, as well as Mental Health Awareness Month, which had begun yesterday. And I need to stress that everyone needs to be fully aware that we are dedicating our time here to charitable fundraising, supporting Mind Charity based in the UK. And in the course of this month, we need to remember and pay a lot more attention to those who are more vulnerable amongst us, people who are suffering from psychological difficulties. And the whole month is going to be focused on a variety of different systems to which we as gamers and us in the media community can be supporting those who actually need that support most. And just you'll hear a lot about different charities and different means through which we can fundraise. But I think I'd like to invite everyone to join our forces to do something exactly the same, raising the profile on various Twitch streams and your channels, social networking, and also to join forces with us here live online. And particularly if you experienced any major difficulty and you were helped from the gaming community or Twitch or any other form of support, well, without getting deeply into personal details, of course, you can just tell us. You can share some of the views, and you'll try to make sure that the awareness spreads out and we bring in new people, and generally make sure that everyone dispels the prejudices which are frequently attached to the community of people who are suffering from mental health issues. In fact, today I've read several things on Twitter and in the mainstream news which absolutely horrified me, and that was the view of some of the terrible incidents that had taken place in Britain, where the condition of someone who is suffering from mental illness is being taken out of context completely and then perversely thrown into the discussion about the incidents which are completely irrelevant and really not at all connected with the actual situation or indeed somebody's health. So this is what we want to dispel, all the myths, and we want to make sure that whatever we do here is factual, it's scientific, it's straightforward, it's based on empirical evidence, the experience of the field over many years, and we also want to be providing as much support as possible to everyone who is in the need. So remember, this month, the month of May, is dedicated to mental health awareness. So whatever you can do, please do so, and come here, raise your hand, speak your mind out, and tell us what you're about to do, whether you want to donate, you want to join us as a volunteer, whether you want to be discussing things live online, you want to be helping somebody, providing any form of care which is necessary. You can tell us about all of that, and I will be greatly appreciative of any comments, views, or your suggestions which you may decide to throw our way. So bear with me, I need to just get my chat up and running, and then I will be able to carry on with my Destiny stream, the Destiny podcast. Bear with me a second. I don't know what's happened with... yeah. So that should be in order, hopefully. We'll see. Right. We are going to be cracking on with the extension of our discussion from Tuesday. And that was about Destiny, Bungie Masterpiece, and how it was made. So I'll just remind our viewers that we had a bit of a rundown on everything related to in-game mechanics and what this game was about. We did not progress towards its story and the development. So it was all about the way the game was initially intended to be and how it was delivered and realized and what we had to be doing in order to complete certain tasks. So it was quite a lot to take on board, and I think most of our veterans will remember how this progression was rather slow over a period of a couple of years before that Taken King DLC was launched, and how difficult it was to be grinding, particularly in isolation, as at that time Twitch channels were not operating, we didn't have any major streaming services, and this game was really played and run by people who were joining certain communities, and that was always experienced as greatly exciting, very satisfying, and people were making friends within those clans and units that were being created at those initial stages. But as the Twitch streams emerged, it was much easier to connect with other people around the world and become members of their communities, and therefore I also had become involved during that initial period and was very happy to see how the community could flourish. So we'll today give you a very brief rundown on what was said in our last podcast and a very brief resume of what Destiny is about, and then we'll be focusing on its plot, basically its synopsis and storytelling, as well as its development process. Right. So first of all, Destiny is an online first-person shooter, and this is a video game which was developed by Bungie, a company that previously worked on Halo series, and it was released worldwide on September the 9th of 2014. I keep thinking it was 2013, but it is 2014. And it was released for PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, Xbox 360 and Xbox consoles. Destiny marked Bungie's first new console franchise since the original Halo series. And I'm one of those guys who purchased the original Xbox and Halo Combat Evolved and played it initially for quite a while. Loved it and was great fun with Bungie right from the start. Never expected that they would be progressing down this route, to which they would create this massive big sci-fi stroke adventure stroke open world stroke FPS, you name it, type of game stroke universe that is providing us with such multitude of activities and so many different options to which we can both engage with the game as well as build our communities with others. And it was the first game in a 10-year agreement between Bungie and Activision. The game was set in a mythological science fiction world, and the game was featuring a multiplayer shared world environment with some elements of role-playing games. So activities in Destiny are divided into two sections, and that is still between player versus environment, that's PvE, and what we know as PvP, in other words, player versus player. And these are two different game types, and that works beautifully in the entire title, and you get everyone to join you for any activity, as much or as little as you want. And that had, at the time, had been quite revolutionary compared to some of the other games, and it was noted as being progressive, being novel, and I think today it had been probably setting up some new standards in industry for other games to do. And we've seen in recent years the games like the big games like Fallout, the franchise that's recently had the series made, and based on the series, we had Fallout 76 coming out with a similar concept and delivering it in a somewhat different format, which didn't really work as expected initially. So Destiny was still spearheading the effort and is continuing to do so today. So in addition to the normal story missions, which we call usually campaigns, it also had PvE features, and these would have 3 player strikes. So you'd have to have 3 of your community members joining you, or you could get some mates or new friends through your random selection. And then the pinnacle activity, the most difficult part of Destiny, which is called raids, and this was based on activity of 6 people. So you would have to have 6 players to join you, and then you would just carry on as normal in order to defeat the major boss. And as we've seen with Destiny 2, we have been given yesterday, day before yesterday, Tuesday, this new activity called Pantheon, where all the raid bosses will have to be neutralized, and with the same level of difficulty, or I should say the level of difficulty which is increasing week by week before the 4th of June of this year, when the new expansion will come out. So again, they realized that raiding has been and always will be the most popular competitive activity in Destiny, that many people play still today in Destiny 1, and they will be just expanding on the content and everything else related to it. A free roam patrol mode was also available for each destination, and this would feature public events and PvP features, objective-based modes, as well as traditional deathmatch game modes. You will know from my streams I'm not very keen on the Crucible. It's typical kind of small, tight map deathmatch, but lots of people are still enjoying it and having fun. Many of those Destiny players who love Crucible in the original game have gone now to the sequel for various reasons, primarily due to its advanced technology, so it's easier to get in, it's faster, the graphics are better, you name it, I can just go to the list. But that basically is in a nutshell what Destiny was providing initially, and we are now going to be looking at the elements of the plot and what's actually happening in Destiny if we are to be concerned with the story. Well, just to give you a bit of a hint, I have had a huge difficulty in understanding this story, and I struggled really in following the narrative which is given to us by our ghost, and that's a kind of a device, AI device, that we keep having with us in order to point us to a certain direction and provide us with answers when not being able to resolve certain difficulties. And I still have this difficulty today. The problem for me was that Destiny had such voluminous information. There were so many facts and figures and characters and situations that you would have to learn about, and then all of them are interconnected within that massive big universe, and the story was told either by the ghost, maybe 95% of the time, and then you get snippets of information from other NPCs, non-playable characters. It didn't gel for me, and I had to be asking others to explain to me what boss was there, for what reason, and what sort of wars were being fought. To simplify, humanity was at war with all kinds of species in Destiny 1. That's not the case in the sequel. Things had changed. Previous old-time foes had become friends, as you probably would know if you are a Destiny veteran. But, in the old game it was us against all, and therefore it was, both exciting and fierce, and definitely attracting a lot of interest from everyone. So we'll go down the route of trying to explain the story, unravel the mysteries, and get some understanding as to what Bungie actually wanted us to do. So the game begins in the 28th century, where Ghost is searching among the Detrius of old Russia, until it finds and resurrects the player's guardian, who actually had been killed previously in an ancient battle. And then upon resurrection, Guardians, the lead character who you're going to be playing, will have no memories of the past at all. So then this ghost will guide the Guardian to a jump ship, and they will go to the tower. The tower is the main social space where you do everything. And then at the tower, they'll meet the speaker, who will tell them all about the darkness, the forces of the darkness, and the dangers that surround this unbelievably dreadful evil entity. So the Guardian is then tasked to probe the nearby Cosmodrome, and that's a major map in Destiny 1, where humanity used to launch its forays into outer space, and also fending off fallen enemies. Fallen is one of the enemies, that's the way they're called, and eventually the Hive, the other lot of enemies, who were thought to have been confined to the moon, but for whatever reason they appeared in Cosmodrome as well. So the Guardian discovers that an old Russian war mind called Rasputin, an AI, artificial intelligence entity built to defend Earth, is still alive and acting with unknown intent, i.e. out of control. So the Guardian also tracks down codes to raise an ancient array to connect it to long-lost colonies throughout the solar system that Rasputin uses to spread its influence to other parts of the system. So Rasputin is being highly manipulative, and we are trying to disentangle the whole of that conflict, and we try to really get out of the maze that Rasputin created. Then we set off to the moon in search of a lost Guardian who was looking for a way into the High Fortress. So after locating his corpse and that ghost, the player's Guardian Ghost discovers that the Hive are raising an army, and they're also planning to invade the Earth. So, very uncanny. The Guardian quickly sets about disrupting the efforts, and then that includes shutting down a ritual that the Hive were using to drain power from the Traveler. And they were doing that using a piece of the Traveler, which Guardian then frees, allowing it to return to the Traveler, and then destroying a powerful weapon called the Sword of Crota. So you have a fantastic activity in there in order to destroy that. And then severing the long-distance communications. And around this time, the Guardian is contacted by Exostranger, a mysterious female who summons them to Venus to face a new enemy. Weird robots called the Vex. Well, you could see this is beautifully told. I mean, I absolutely love the way they're telling it. That's not that clear in the game. When you're playing the game, it's much harder to follow the story in such lovely, beautiful, linear storytelling fashion. And when I'm reading this, I'm just given some extra clues. So it's really illuminating, and I would recommend this article and the synopsis as it's been told to literally everyone, whoever has been here present in our Destiny universe for many years. And I wonder whether you will find it as useful as myself, and just tell us, send us a message or a tweet and indicate whether you are fully aware of what's going on in Destiny, or you're still learning like myself. So, coming back to the story, when the Guardian arrives on Venus, the Exostranger describes the Vex as an evil which is so dark it despises other evil. She tells them about the Black Garden, a city where the Vex are born, and then implores the Guardian to find it and rip out its heart, as this will be the only way the Traveler will begin to heal. So Glow says that they need to speak to the Awoken, another species, and these characters will lurk out in the Reef. So that's a new social space in the asteroid belt, and they refuse to take sides in the galaxy wars. The Exostranger then leaves, as she did not have the time to explain things further, and she remains in Destiny 1 one of the most mysterious characters that would emerge in the course of the story, and we find out a lot more about her in the sequel. So once the Guardian arrives at the Reef, they meet the Queen of Reef. Her name is Mara Sov, and her brother Prince Aldrin Sov, who then tells the Guardian that they will help them locate the Black Garden if they bring them the head of Vexgate Lord. It's a big battle in there, which you also will play, and fierce and definitely very, very exciting. The Guardian travels back to Venus, where they uncover the archive, which reveals secrets about the Vex, including the location of a place called the Vault of Glass. And guess what? This place is your first big raid in Destiny, and pathways across the galaxy. So after you defeat Draxis, a fallen Kell of the House of Winter, the Guardian confronts the Vexgate Lord, claims its head, and returns to the Queen, who tells them to take its eye to the Meridian Bay on Mars, where it can be used to enter the Black Garden. That's the first section of the game polished off. After arriving on Mars in the Meridian Bay, Ghost informs the Guardian of its inhabitants. There are several new creatures that we are going to be meeting there. The Cabal have been trying to break the encryption on the Vexgate with only limited success, but they do control many of the places that the Guardian needs to visit Mars thanks to their exclusion zone, which nobody had ever managed to penetrate. So when you play the game, just remember that it's quite an important part of the story. The player's Guardian becomes the first to penetrate the exclusion zone and then heads to the Garden Spire, which charges the Gate Lord's eye. Then they also travel to the buried city, the birthplace of many technological wonders, where they discover an AI that used to be linked to the war mind of Mars. Then after the activation of the array, is now controlled by that Rasputin. With the Vex now present on Mars, the Guardian finds out what they're doing, and they're returning to the home, the Black Garden. After that, the Guardian then sets off to the Black Garden. After going through a telereporter, they find themselves in a place that is not on any map of known space and time. After several battles, the Guardian reaches the heart of the Black Garden, and the Vex appear to be worshipping. So the heart summons 3 soul progeny, a group of Vex units called Eschaton Mind, and Imminent Mind and Primeval Mind, so 2 different types of groups. Units, I should say. After defeating the 3 soul progeny, the heart is destroyed, returning the Guardian and the Guardian itself to Mars and lifting the Shroud of Darkness from the Traveler back on Earth, allowing it to begin healing. At the tower, the speaker addresses gathered Guardians in a celebratory speech. Over in the nearby hangar, though the player's Guardian converses with Exo-Stranger, who says that the fight is very, very far from over. In fact, it's still there right at the beginning. The heart of the Black Garden may have been destroyed, but on Venus, the Vault of Glass suddenly reopens. A team of Guardians decide to investigate the mysterious Vault of Glass. That's in Vault of Glass Raid, described as the Vex Underworld by the Ishtar Collective. The Vault is a realm where the Vex can control reality and even erase people from existence. They're really a dreaded enemy. This power is used by the most powerful denizens within the Vault, a Vex subrace called the Gorgons, and a powerful Vex mind called the Templar, and Althean, I said Athean, times Conflux. But Athean and the Templar utilize machines called oracles to do so. While these powers do not extend to outside the Vault, its enigmatic nature had lured countless Guardians to the doom. They were not careful enough. The most infamous being ill-fated fire team of Kabir, the Legionless, which consisted of himself, future war cult warlock Pradith, and a well-known hunter, Pahanin. So Pahanin was the only member to make it out alive, and Pradith was forever lost in the dark corners of time. So Kabir drank the radiolaria of the oracles and then was turned into a Vex. So he became one of those monstrous creatures. However, in Cable's last moments, he used his light to close the vault and leave behind an artifact, the Aegis, to help any other Guardians daring enough to follow his footsteps. The new fire team of Guardians make the descent and attempt to succeed where Kaber and his fire team failed. Using the Aegis, the Guardians manage to defeat the Templar and its oracles. Then they successfully traverse to Gorgon's Labyrinth, undetected in full, and then before finally reaching Athean, and that's times Conflux. Central figure of the Vex Conflux network, Athean is able to send Guardians into the distant past or future at will and summons versions of Vex from the past and future to aid him. The Vex mind is also capable of summoning oracles like the Templar and attempts to erase the new fire team from existence. However, despite the astronomical odds, the Guardians fight their way through time, destroy the oracles, and defeat Athean, eliminating a major Vex threat. So, I guess what we look at next is the development. And we had this question about why Bungie had divorced. I actually didn't tell you this. I forgot to mention it in the course of this podcast. There was a mention from, I think, Jessica, who asked what was the reason for them to depart from Halo and then progress to Destiny, what the idea was. And I thought the main reason for that was the studio ambition to be growing from Trilogy, which they felt was fairly complete in their shape and form, to a game that will be constantly progressing and developing always and giving you new ideas and new shapes and forms which you can be exploring over a lengthy period of time, i.e. the ambition being the greatest motivating factor. So we'll just look at the ideas behind the departure and as to why they had gone from Halo. And I also mentioned that for me, the remastered version of Halo Combat Evolved does remind me of Destiny to a degree, but that's because they introduced new backgrounds and new environments that are very sort of aligned with the world that we were getting used to as we progressed in Destiny universe. Anyway, just a remark. And you can still click on the options button if you're on Xbox and then go from the old to the new straight away. And many of our veterans said we much prefer the old. I don't know why, I quite preferred the new, but there you are, that's just my personal preference. Anyway, Bungie had announced in 2007 it was becoming an independent studio and separating in full from Microsoft Game Studios. They were a member of the studios from the beginning and obviously aligned with the release of the original Xbox console. Contractually, they remained committed to compelling Halo Reach. As Bungie tied up development of Reach in 2010, they began developing its own new intellectual property. We call that usually IP in jargon. And that was Destiny, but its original name was Project Tiger. That was the code of the game. The company recognized it would need a major publisher to support the project because it was to be very ambitious and very costly. So according to Martin O'Donnell, they had considered going back to Microsoft and also had approached Sony as a publishing partner, but both companies would have required Bungie to turn over control of the IP, so they would be in full control, which Bungie considered to be completely non-negotiable, wanting to be a properly fully independent at all times. Activision Blizzard, on the other hand, stepped in and they said they would allow Bungie to retain control of the IP with expectations of financial performance which will have to be substantial over the years. So Bungie's 10-year publishing agreement with Activision was announced by April of 2010. So that was 3 years before the release of the game. Under their agreement with Activision, the new IP developed by Bungie would have to be owned by Bungie and not Activision, and in a similar deal to the EA Partners program. Details of this contract were revealed during the course of Activision's lawsuit against Jason West and Vincent Zambella. And these are the guys who were the founding members and former employees of Infinity Ward, including provisions for 4 Destiny games over the course of a 10-year deal. 4 games intended. Initially, Activision Blizzard CEO Robert Kotick suggested that the total investment in Destiny would be around $500 million, so that's $500 million in a 10-year deal. And Bungie CEO Pete Parsons clarified that the game's development would cost not even close to $500 million, saying for marketing you'd have to ask Activision people because they're obviously better versed in that, but for the overall development costs we will not be coming anywhere close to $500 million or $500 million, in other words. Activision subsequently confirmed the $500 million figure, that's $500 million, and that's $500 million, stating that marketing, upfront infrastructure costs and investment in the game's engine were all included, and this could be amortized over the life of their IP. So Bungie would then earn an additional $2.5 million bonus payout if the first game achieved a Metacritic score of 90 or above. I'm not 100% sure whether this is correct, but they give it to us as a fact. And it just seemed like right from the beginning there was an element of high-level competition involved in them scoring and meeting certain targets. I guess in return for I wouldn't say full, but 3/4 independence, which turned out to be untrue towards the end, the tenure when they separated, or as they called it, they divorced, and then both companies went separate ways. It was in 2020. By mid-2013, most of the groundwork for Destiny had been completed, including lore, game engine, and many environments and missions, tracking for September 2013 release. However, a supercut of the game's story and mission structure, presented by Joseph Statton's writing team, did not test well with Bungie upper management, and they were led by Jason Jones. Jones felt the story was too dense and far too linear. I guess similar to Mass Effect at that time. The game would have been released 2 or 3 years beforehand. And he said a design philosophy he felt was important to Destiny, and this was the ability for the player to choose where to go at any moment in time, to be like a free roaming traveler. You can go wherever you like at any moment in time, rather than follow the linear structure of storytelling. So as a result, the entire mission progression of the game was rebuilt between mid-2013 and then the game's launch in September 2014. So it's very interesting that a lot of the concepts and structures that were there within the first 18 months, they simply had to be purged. And I guess the second step was with the introduction of the Taken King. And they were really shifting away from a structure that quickly introduced the 4 major environments, notably Earth, the Moon, Venus and Mars, and to a hub-based structure in which each planet would be visited sequentially, and then with an expanding variety of missions on each planet. Existing missions were spliced and rearranged to fit this new paradigm, and that also included dialogue and cinematics. I just wonder whether they had many more cutscenes right at the beginning that would really give you a linear perspective. I'm not sure. I'd like to know, or would like to see what the score was then, because they reworked the structure and the structure was non-linear. So as such, it came across as a completely novel game. Staten decided to leave the company amidst this reboot. He was very unhappy with the purge, though this would not be announced until September 2013. To cement the new framework, Jones developed the director interface that exists in the shipping version of the game, from which planets and missions easily can be selected. He also established the Iron Bar, a series of executive meetings which would be overseeing this massive project restructuring. I think this was really wise, because otherwise it would have just completely fallen apart. And this also involved rescoping the project to be a lot more focused on the task, and the areas such as the High Fortress Dreadnought. It's fantastic, really. They are this sort of massive big ship that is so dark and weird and deadly, full of these dreadful creatures, and Dreadnought seems to be the best possible name for it as well. Then an Earth location called the European Dead Zone, and European Dead Zone is more prominent in the sequel. And then Osiris' Temple and Mercury, all of those were cut, and they would all feature later and return back in future installments. So this was not part and parcel of the original release. They've not been done, they just kept them for future development. The restructuring was also required, and an internal delay of the release date, first from September of 2013, which was the first planned date, to March 2014. As you could see, that happens very, very frequently for obvious reasons. Sometimes it's based on investment, and other times it's based on attack. And then at times they just feel that they've not met targets, so therefore they still have to carry on working on the project. You will remember that Beyond Light, one of the expansions of the sequel, was introduced through Microsoft and the Game Pass as the main tool for the promotion, because the other game, incidentally Halo Infinite, which was proprietary to Microsoft at the time, was delayed due to poor tests, and they found that the multiplayer was not performing too well, and they said, well, it's all well and fine that we'll have 20-year anniversary, and it's all well and fine that we'll have the game launched together with a new console, so be replay of was it 2002, but we just can't do it because the game isn't going to work, and that will be a complete disaster. The launch will be a failure. We can't afford that. And Microsoft quickly resorted to what they felt was an adequate alternative by bringing in Bungie and Destiny 2 Beyond Light as being the main marketing tool for the new console, and being also offered on Game Pass. And I'm quite frankly still not convinced that this was a good idea. I don't think it really delivered in the same fashion as expected, and it did affect Xbox promotion and sales and all sorts. And then it appeared to be half-baked, as we heard originally, that Bungie will stay with Microsoft for a very long period of time and all the content will be available. And then eventually that didn't materialize, as they departed after 12 months. So So after Statton's departure, the writing team felt he had built at Bungie for the Halo series. Basically, they felt this was all kind of left leaderless and isolated. As a result, much of his extra time was spent perfecting the gameplay and feel of the shooting, while the narrative was only polished to a perfunctory level and the story was written without writers. And I think that's probably what can be seen, felt and experienced in the game. And that still had been persisting for a few years, up to the point where they took this major executive decision to start enforcing RPG content in the sequel, with seasonal content and cutscenes and everything else, and NPCs being more communicative at the end of your seasonal story missions and their completion. So, you know, it was a turnaround that did take place many years later. I still think that not working more on the story and maybe not providing many enough cutscenes and additional content in the original game was a mistake. The game is brilliant as it is, but it would have been even better, even more legendary and even more of a masterpiece had they spent a bit more time on the actual narrative. So, coming back to how things went, on April the 11th, 2014, Bungie fired its longtime composer and audio director Martin O'Donnell. He made music for the first game, and O'Donnell collaborated with Paul McCartney on an 8-movement symphonic suite called Music of the Spheres, and that was completed in 2013. So it was a dispute, and then which basically was linked to O'Donnell's belief, the composer's belief, that the Activision deal had begun to erode the overall friendly, pally kind of family-style culture at Bungie. And Activision was reluctant to release the symphony as a standalone work and went over O'Donnell's head to replace it with their own music in a very prominent E3 2013 trailer. Some of you may recall that if you watched it. And, still really, I guess, marred by controversy, even today. In the ensuing disagreement, O'Donnell came into conflict at that point with both Activision and Bungie, and then Bungie leadership was accused of unacceptable conduct in his performance review, and that was also leading to his termination. And fans were concerned that the absence of O'Donnell's would affect the in-game music of Destiny, and regardless, Pete Parsons of Bungie confirmed that Destiny's music was already complete by this point. And O'Donnell prevailed in a civil suit against Bungie over the improper dismissal in September 2015, and he was winning unpaid wages and profit sharing and lost stock and all sorts. However, Bungie later filed a complaint against him in 2021, so that's quite a few years later, after O'Donnell had uploaded his work from Music of the Spheres and Destiny to his YouTube and Bandcamp channels, which Bungie stated was against the terms and conditions which were placed against him as a result of an injunction raised in the 2015 trial, who had been ordered to return all his work to Bungie. So it's all about the ownership. You could see when we're going through this, you realize what sort of hot issue there is, what material you're using if you are a content creator on your streams, or small videos and shorts and clips and stories that you're placing elsewhere, because the intellectual property is the key, and the ownership of the works, which sometimes had been signed over to major investment companies or the big corporations, is seen as absolutely pivotal. Wait a second. And many people have been plagued by the same issue. So, if it's not been ironed out properly at the very initial stage, with big legal firms fully involved, then there could be issues. And you could well imagine his frustration if he created the entire music and suddenly he was no longer the owner of that. It would certainly raise a few eyebrows everywhere. So eventually he was found to be in contempt of court, and then in 2021, which is 3 years ago, he was told he's violating the injunction, and then he was ordered to remove all that material as well as submit to review of everything he had, all of his electronic media and any further copies of Destiny related material. So it's really quite dreadful that this whole thing was carrying on And I've got to say that I was not really fully aware of that at the time when it took place, but I did get some news on various hubs eventually, and you know, it didn't really benefit the game one way or the other. But on the other hand, Destiny does have absolutely amazing music, and it is one of those signature marks of the game and Bungie Studios, where whenever or wherever you are to be listening some of that music, you recognize it instantly. It's a massive big epic sound similar to what you have with Hans Zimmer and his music for Christopher Nolan's films, for instance, and just really amazing. And I can just listen to the music even without watching the game or doing anything about it. Get it on YouTube and, you know, on the videos and material which is on Bungie YouTube channel, and just enjoy. So spend a bit of time on technology and what that really meant for Destiny. And Destiny incorporated a new game engine which is called the Tiger engine, and it is based on the engine used for most Halo games. So it basically allows global illumination and real-time dynamic lighting to occur together in cohesion. So that was making it much easier for for certain sequences to be seen. Do apologize. I mentioned to my viewers earlier that I contracted some sort of ear infection, and I have a bit of a strange irritation in my throat as well. So, you know, I don't know if I caught a virus or what there while I went swimming. You never know. You know, swimming pools can really spread contagion without any hint of doubt, really, and it's been upsetting me a bit. Anyway, going back to the engine. So you probably noticed that in some areas of Destiny 1 you were able to engage with very dark corners that looked brightly illuminated, and that worked well on the original setup. As we were moving forward to next-gen consoles, then that was, I guess, eroded to a degree. So in addition to this new engine called Tiger, Bungie's goal is and was that Destiny would natively render graphics at 1080 on both consoles, so that's Xbox and PlayStation. And an innovation in Bungie's Hopper technology, which has been the backbone of the entire Halo's matchmaking system, will be then allowing better player matchmaking in order to create a more natural experience in either cooperative or competitive multiplayer modes. And that has been introduced to the sequel recently, as you can see with your Fireteam Finder. Not sure whether it still works as good as it should, but you know, we are getting there, I think, with those inventions, and there will be more in demand as we carry on, as many people have different skills in or different power levels, or you know, loot, or the just excuse me for a moment, or various other elements of the game, and therefore having that Fighting Finder, particularly for PvP matches, always will be very, very useful. So developers at Bungie criticized the new engine as ill-suited to the online nature of the game, and they said its resource-intensive nature would be making even small changes to maps and then requiring an overnight rendering and compiling process. It's a technical issue which obviously I'm not personally familiar with. Internet sources call the development of new maps and missions grueling on account of the game engine. And that's been the problem for many different developers. I've heard the same story from, well, not name, several other studios, and you know, the tech is evolving and developing faster than human mind, and you know, we've seen that in other aspects of everyday life like politics and current affairs. We're lagging massively behind. The application of the tech into everyday existence has had an amazing and an enormous impact on how people work, relate, behave, talk, and everything else, and it's still not been properly recognized. So that probably is one of those elements which we can call collateral. Coming back to the design, so for Destiny, the main person, who was the lead writer, Joseph Staten, hoped to build a universe that would take on a life of its own, and that is what's been happening with the sequel. Not in the first game, the designers worked around 7 pillars, 7 core principles, which would ensure that the game will be accessible to both casual and then new players, and then also experienced veterans of first-person shooters, and also people who liked massive multiplayer games. So quite a variety of different types of gamers. I guess the intention was to bring them all into the same arena. They'll all kind of get together, enjoy the game with each other. And this would be integrating social media, and that would be allowing everyone to gain information about the new quests and the friends' activities. And that had been introduced in the first game, so you were able to inspect your mates and see what gear they had, armor, etc. And that would be also connected to designing the playable classes. They were saying that they got inspired by different sources of science fiction, and they had several references. Hunter's a reconnaissance class, which is meant to be reminiscent of a classic bounty hunter. And they did mention that Han Solo from Star Wars was, and some other classic characters from Western films, such as Clint Eastwood in Sergio Leone's trilogy, Man with No Name, would be the most prominent influences. So that's very interesting. I never thought of Eastwood's character in Leone's flicks to be that, but I can see the reason as to why they could be considered. Silent creature or character who is mysterious and at the same time utterly deadly. And I think hunters really fit into that type of iconography very, very well. And also they have this specific skill, which is to use hand cannons, eye revolvers, and that will really bring them into the equation with Harrison Ford in early Star Wars films, as well as Clint Eastwood in Leonis. So wonderful. You see, you learn every day. I completely forgot about this reference, but it's just wonderful to discover. Warlocks combine weapons with special powers from the Traveler and are meant to be a form of space wizard. So that character was influenced by Jedi Knights, and then also the Lord of the Rings series, like Gandalf, when he's got that walking stick and has those special metaphysical transcendental powers. And then they also refer to the Matrix series and Morpheus. So they said these are the major influences as they were considering how Warlock should look like. And then Titans, which favor heavy weapons and melee attacks, are intended to be reminiscent of the classic Future Soldier. They were inspired by Bungie's own Master Chief from Halo, and then also equally by stormtroopers from Star Wars, and maybe some other Space Marines and characters from other science fiction novels and films. And they also cited the influence of action role-playing games such as Monster Hunt and Dark Souls, noting their mechanical depth and brutality. Yeah, I think I would say that all of these influences are very present, but what they didn't say is, for me, the world we encountered there immediately right at the start was similar to that one of Mass Effect, their competitors, BioWare. And it was just delivered in a completely different environment with a different type of storytelling and activities, with a lot more emphasis on PvE and PvP, which is based on action and shooting and not really on dialogue. And, the immediate reference, the world which is similar, it's a massive big open world galaxy exploring stars, really was giving you a very, very different direction right from the start. Also an influence, and I think when we've seen recently Starfield released and we're sort of watching how Destiny is evolving, one way or the other, they all have to be confessing and agreeing and I guess coming to a conclusion that that BioWare are wonderful in storytelling, and there's a lot to be learned from there. And BioWare games are being treasured, cherished, and loved even today for the quality and the beauty of their narrative and the strength of the characters and the relationships that they have with each other, and it's all based on dialogue and your options, which you will be considering as you carry on through the story of those games. So I think Bungie are progressing down that route. So not mentioned as an influence in this description, but certainly I would state it very strongly as one of the main ones. Don't forget that Mass Effect was released, I think, 2007 or so, and you had Destiny being considered ready towards the end, like 2009, 10, and then it was fully released in 2013. So, obviously they were not going to be connecting the two, but that for me is a very simple, straightforward reference, which I had seen at the time when the games were being created and given to the world. So you have several other people involved with voiceovers, and they had Peter Dinklage originally brought in to be doing the Ghost, and the character didn't have any lines in the 2 expansions of Year 1, and then Nolan North replaced Dinklage for the Taken King and also re-recorded all of the Ghost lines from the original game. And Bungie wanted to create a consistent storytelling experience from beginning to end. So obviously you won't have the same actor to be doing it consistently. North was excited to put his mark on the role, and he was also hoping to evolve the character in future Destiny releases. And he also said he didn't really spend much time listening to the previous Dinklage recordings, and he didn't want to have any prejudices or preconceived ideas in order to influence how he would be doing it. So he wanted to be totally original. And according to Bungie, the actor change was made due to Dinklage's availability. He was very busy with bigger AAA projects, and therefore they swapped those 2 actors. And then David Cross was hired to write jokes for the character Ghost, but none of his work was ever used in the final game. Well, the humor was a bit dry, and sometimes, it's similar to, I guess, the immediate reference is Star Wars robots, and the way the 3PO, he is the one who talks funny and comes up with sort of snappy jokes which hardly anyone understands. So that's the reference, I think, and it worked in a similar fashion in Destiny as well. So a lot can be said about soundtrack. Destiny has one of the most monumental, most epic tracks ever seen in a video game, and don't forget they had many AAA blockbusters since 2013, so that's like 11 years gone. At the time, this was staggering. This was a score you'd see in Steven Spielberg's AAA productions of Hollywood's, and it is just amazing to be able to experience. It was amazing to be able to experience that music at the time, both on consoles and elsewhere, and it's just, you could listen to it on, I think it was on Spotify or one of the other platforms, and just enjoy the quality, the epic dimension, the aura that the music was introduced into the game. And it is really so prominent and so clearly defining the relationships and the universe you find yourself in, that it becomes like an inseparable part from your overall experience. And wonderful. I mean, absolutely terrific. The original soundtrack was composed by Michael Salvatore and Paul Johnson, and then also Martin O'Donnell and Paul McCartney. Then it was iTunes, it wasn't actually Spotify. I remember listening to it at the time. They released it by iTunes on September 26, 2014. 44 instrumental compositions. If I'm not mistaken, well, they have been. I'm not sure they're still there. They were on Bungie YouTube channel, and you could just simply click and listen to the whole thing. And 44 compositions. As said, the soundtrack marked O'Donnell's final work for Bungie after years of composing the entire score for Halo franchise and several games before then. And then Hope for the Future was a specially recorded original song which was inspired by the game and produced by Paul McCartney, the former Beatle. And that is certainly what we'll also remember about the release of the original game. Abbey Road Studios, apparently, was the studio where they were recording this. And then early in Destiny's development, O'Connell was contacted by Pete Parsons, and he's, I'm not so sure whether he's still there, but he was at the time the chief operating officer of Bungie, and was also asked to begin writing music for the game. And at this time, Destiny was still in its infancy, but it lacked any gameplay material for O'Donnell to score music, so instead he began creating music based solely on the game's ideas, so he didn't really see any gameplay, but the work was astonishing. And by February 2013, over 50 minutes of those soundtrack were already recorded with a massive big orchestra that had 106 participants, musicians, all done at Abbey Road Studios, the legendary studios where the Beatles recorded the stuff, and in London, of course, my city. And O'Donnell gave the early pieces of music to Bungie in hopes that they would foster inspiration within the development team. So unlike the Halo series, where pieces of music were only 2 to 3 minutes long, O'Donnell stated that the soundtrack for Destiny had no proper time restrictions. And he said, with the pieces clocking in as long as they need to be, he could probably come up with some other solution. And then he collaborated with Paul McCartney on the soundtrack for the better part of 2 years, and they traded ideas, melody samples, and I think McCartney was quite excited about being fully involved with something which was like new and revolutionary and definitely novel to him, and teams back and forth. So in April 2014, O'Donnell was dismissed, and we've heard earlier as to why that was. So Music of the Spheres is an 8-part musical companion piece to Destiny, and that was composed by Mr. O'Donnell, and they did it together with Salvatore and McCartney. So parts of this music were used to accompany a Destiny trailer that was screened at E3 2013 and in the official soundtrack. But following this dismissal and a legal dispute, eventually this Music of the Spheres remained unreleased, and a whistleblower had released this to the public via the internet, and they officially released the album on June the 1st of 2018, and I think that's when I heard it on their website. It's interesting, isn't it? Music and the soundtrack of this film are critical in terms of how you're experiencing the overall gameplay and the game overall. There's been so much controversy and so much conflict related to it. And Salvatore, O'Donnell was involved with Bungie and Halo trilogy, so you know, a permanent member of the team, and just very sad to see when these kinds of conflicts erupt, and it's usually connected with, I guess, change of direction or some degree of corporate or individual interest, and there's all kinds of factors that can really come in the way, and then a beautiful friendship or partnership is being destroyed, and you know, ending up with these legal suits will carry on for many years. Just ridiculous. It does happen, unfortunately. So we'll come to the area that will tell us all about the release. Okay, so we'll probably do the release, and then we'll talk about all the other details in the next podcast. So what happens once all of those things were polished off? So Destiny concept art and plot elements first leaked in November of 2012. So this was a little while before the actual release. Bungie supplemented the leak with more details, and they were expressing regrets that another upcoming video game had been revealed ahead of schedule. So Destiny's official unveiling occurred at the PlayStation 4 announcement event on February the 20th of 2013. And then we had an alpha test, and I think there's several of our community members who were doing the test, and they were telling me all about it. That was in 2014, 12th to 16th of June, and that was exclusively on PS4. So it was absolutely exclusive to the console, Sony's console. And then there was a public beta test, again on PlayStation, in July 17th to 23rd. And no, I said that wrong. That was on July 17th. 2014, and then Xbox consoles, that was 6 days later, July the 23rd of 2014. All of that, as always, was available to people who pre-ordered, and huge hype was built about the game after they've done betas and alphas. So before the beta closed on July 27, it attracted 4.6 million players. So you could see how incredibly attractive it was with its new concepts and ideas to everyone. And the game went gold on August the 23rd, and which meant it was really ready for release. And then it was released worldwide on September the 9th, 2014. That was a couple of weeks later, and that was released on PlayStation 3, 4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. So everyone who pre-ordered the game received an early access to the Vanguard Armory. And additionally, pre-orders from GameStop received an exclusive Red Sparrow vehicle. And you know that lots of people really like having these collector's items. But I have to say, what does upset me sometimes is that it is being sold initially as a collector's item and then later becomes accessible to everyone. And that's just not kosher for me. You know, if it's a collector's item, it needs to stay that way. You're not to be receiving it at any other time because you had invested at that time in order to get it. And I could tell you many examples from the industry, but you know, it's the guys with the money that dictate what is going to be happening with such items and not the developer themselves. So we have then everyone who pre-ordered Call of Duty Advanced Warfare also received a blacksmith armor shader in Destiny. So it was, I guess, aligned with Activision, as they were the publisher for Call of Duty at the time. Those who purchased the digital PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 versions of the game were also allowed to download the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One clients respectively at no additional cost. So that was by the January 2015, so it was a couple of years, 8 months later. And some of the game's initial content, which was including certain items and missions, were timed exclusives for PlayStation platforms, and that was the Dust Palace Strike, the Exodus Blue Crucible map, the exotic weapons, the auto rifle Monte Carlo, which is very good, the hand cannon Hawk Moon, again very good, a rare gear set for each class, manifold Seeker for Warlock, Vanilla for Titan, and Argus for Hunter, 3 ships, Aurora Wake, Crypt Hammer, and Outrageous Fortune. So all of these items were PlayStation 4 exclusive, and each expansion followed suit and had timed exclusives for PlayStation platforms. So anyone who was doing it on PlayStation would have been in the driving seat, and that's one of the reasons as to why I've gone down the route of playing it on PlayStation, albeit a couple of years later. The initial exclusive content and the content of the first 2 expansions became available for the Xbox platforms with the early release of The Taken King. So The Taken Kings and Rise of Iron's exclusive content did become available in October of 2017. So that's a few years later. And 3 collector's editions of Destiny were also released. Wow, this is very important. And all of you collectors, listen to this. The first one was the limited edition, then the Ghost edition, and then the digital limited edition. So, the limited edition included a steelbook game case, which is very pretty, the Arms and Armament Field Guide, voice cards from the Golden Age, antique star chart, and in-game content. So the in-game content was an exclusive Ghost shell, ship, character emblem, and then your Destiny expansion pass. The Ghost edition, so that's the edition number 2, included everything in the limited edition, as well as a motion activated replica Ghost with lights and the voice of Peter Dinklage. So that means it was a different voiceover, and then a set of photos and stickers. So the digital limited edition included Destiny, and the in-game content included in the physical collector's editions. A PS4 bundle was also available, which included a very nice 500 gigs Glacier white PS4 and a copy of Destiny. I have seen quite a few of those. I never bought it because I prefer the consoles to be dark, so when I'm playing the games they're not reflecting light, you know, particularly if it's at night, and therefore I didn't buy it. And they've had, well, I've seen quite a few of those Destiny ones, and they were very pretty. They were white with these Destiny style designs on top. And then with the release of The Taken King, the 2 new retail weapons of Destiny, which is the Legendary Edition and the Collector's Edition, the main one, were released alongside the Taken King, and both include a copy of the game with Year 1 DLC, The Taken King. A digital Collector's Edition was also available, so Year 1 players received commemorative items when purchasing The Taken King. A new PS4 bundle was also available, and that included a limited edition white 500 gigs PS4 with Destiny artwork on top, on the face of the console, and then the Legendary Edition of The Taken King and all bonus content from the Legendary and Digital Collector's Editions. Everyone who purchased The Taken King received an item called Spark of Light, which boosted 1 new character to level 25. I remember discussing this on my channel, where several people said that they were really excited about it at the time, and later it turned out to be not necessary or not needed anymore. And that was the minimum level needed to play the Taken King content, so it was level 25 rather than 40. With the release of Rise of Iron, a new retail version of Destiny was also released alongside the expansion called Destiny The Collection, and that included a copy of the game, all of the DLCs up to including Rise of Iron. And like Taken King, players who purchased Rise of Iron were receiving an item called Spark of Light, although this one boosts one new character to level 40, which is the minimum level needed to play Rise of Iron content. So as you could see, what I just described were the elements that are still cherished and treasured by Destiny 1 veterans. They do not like the idea of seasonal content upping the light level and ascending your progression. That is not what the veterans like. They like lengthy grinds through which they will become the masters of their own game and of their own destiny in a game, I should say, as well as having some degree of prevalence when compared to other participants, and therefore perhaps being in a position to run the show, to teach and train others, and having this sort of Master Yoda type of skills. And I can see as to why that may be seen as quite unpopular when you come to newbies and rookies, people just joining the community, because it will take them a long time to get to that level. I remember Sniper King telling me it was taking about 18 months to get to the whole lot, and he played it mainly by himself. That was before the Twitch channels became highly pertinent and fully active. And it just gives you a picture of what happens. And I think it's the model in video gaming world that will not survive. There are reasons for that. Many people like the idea amongst the older group, but at the same time, if you have a game that is requiring the degree of investment, it will have to be proving to the investors that there are new people coming in, that there's a turnaround, that they're retaining their player game base, and in a very competitive environment, that is very, very difficult, as you've seen with many games in recent months and years. So coming back to this, speaking from my own personal experience, I did buy a few of these editions prior to the collector's edition, and they didn't really cut it for me. They looked pretty, but they didn't have the full content. There was always something missing. And then with the purchase of Destiny the Collection, I was able to have literally everything, and that's every single item and content, or bit of content that was created for this Bungie's masterpiece. So if you are a newbie, if you're listening to this broadcast and wondering, there are so many editions of Destiny there, which one should I purchase? I'd say go for the most expensive one, which is called the Collection, because you will get the entire content. Everything is going to be there, and therefore you'll be able to connect with your mates and maybe introduce some family, friends and relatives to this wonderful masterpiece. Nothing will be missed. You will not have to be enviously observing someone else who has better gear or is reaching another higher level than yours. That's not going to be happening. You are going to be able to walk through it and do anything you wanted, and that is exactly the way it needs to be. So remember, Destiny the Collection is the edition that you should be having in your possession, installed in a console, be it either purchased digitally or through a physical copy, but that will stay with you until the end of the days, right? So we've come to the end of this section of our podcast. We will carry on next time with extra information on the post-release content, on expansions, on events, gameplay changes, and a few other things, possibly also the reception and how the game was received initially. So that all is to follow. I think I've given you some really good ideas on what this game was about, and most importantly, how it has to be played. That was in our podcast part 1. Today, I've given you some idea on the development of the game, what was happening within the company, and what people were involved, and what kinds of issues and conflicts actually had risen during the production of the game, as well as the reasons as to why they were changing direction. And then we'll be looking at the last part, the last section, and that is post-release content, as well as the overall reception, and as to why this game became so incredibly favored and loved by so many community members worldwide, and as to why some people are still playing it 10 years ago, on everyday basis. So all of that is coming soon. Well, thanks for listening. Very grateful for your attention, for your contributions. Thank you for coming today. Just keep it in mind that what we are doing is linked with charitable fundraising, and that this is the month of May, and this month is our mental health awareness month. So we want to be raising the profile of the charity that we are supporting, which is a British charity called Mind, supporting and helping people with mental health issues. And we want to be donating and contributing as much as possible at any given moment in time. It doesn't have to be on my live stream, it could be at any other time. Just access About page, click on a panel which is dedicated to charities, you get the link from Tiltify and you donate. By doing so, you are going to be saving lives, you're going to be helping the charity and making sure that people who need the services the most are going to be receiving them for quite some time to come. On that note, I shall wish you all a very, very good night, and I'll see you all tomorrow.